News out on the U.S. economy and its employment rates, with the latest numbers showing an improvement in the job market.
The reaction to Friday's job report was the first in a while where Wall Street and Main Street both cheered the news. But the story is more complex than the numbers show. Here now with the details is Ebru Today's economy contributor Bill Rodgers. He's a Ph.D. and Rodgers professor who breaks down the report for us. So what came out of Friday's info, Bill?
Sure. Well, you saw 23 months of consecutive job growth in the private sector, which is very, very important. And then that seems to be correlated or related to a sizable drop or a downward tick in the unemployment rate. That is the share of the labor force who's actually looking for a job, down to 8.3%, the lowest level since basically 2009, early 2009.
Wow.
So big headline numbers, and we're looking to see how consumer confidence reacts to that.
That's an interesting point you make. Consumer confidence or political news. I mean, the Republicans play this down and say, well, it's still 8.3, that's high.
That's right.
And Democrats say, well, you know, it's way below 9%. I don't know, how do you play that?
How do you cut through that? Yeah.
Well, it's clearly, everything that, all the news that's coming out, particularly about the economy, is being viewed through a political lens, right? And that, it is very odd to see these Republicans down, sort of talking down the economy, because that's their narrative. But what's interesting that came out of last night's primaries in Colorado, Minnesota, Missouri, it could be possibly the moving through or the return of some social issues dominating or beginning to trump the economy, because those, just by the unemployment rates in those three states, they are below average, and they look like they have sort of declined more than the U.S. economy's overall jobless rate. So with the administration sort of having to backtrack on their decision about contraception with the Catholic Church, they understand, that we need to keep the economy at the forefront. But social issues could emerge and become that wedge issue to get people to vote, against their pocketbook or in the contrary to their pocketbook.
Now, when you see these numbers, as you said, they look so great, but then there's the political angle of it.
Right.
If you cut through it and try to be balanced and fair when you're looking at it, what would you say? I mean, is the meaning truly a good one, or is the fact that they're saying there are a certain sector of workers that aren't getting work and will not get work?
Yeah, I mean, Chairman Bernanke had a really good, framed it really well. He said the other day in his testimony to the Senate, we've seen the beginning of the sort of moving to third gear. That is job creation well in excess of that 150,000 threshold that we're now in the 200, 300,000 range, that will bring down the 42% of Americans who are unemployed that have been unemployed for over half a year.
So this is the long-term unemployment we're talking about.
That's right.
Do they have a fighting chance of getting back in?
Yes, most definitely. But public policy has to play a role there. That even in a service-based economy, skills atrophy, particularly if you're isolated. And we're in a service-based economy, your ability to smile, your ability to sort of be punctual, your ability to work in teams, and after you've been out of work for a long period of time, that atrophies. And so we need to make sure we have the appropriate job training in place, the appropriate job assistance, and the appropriate job readiness types of tools for these Americans, but also even young college graduates, my students at Rodgers. They're going to be entering the labor force too, and they're going to need that assistance, because we're still going to be seeing, the job growth. It's going to take us a while to really get to that point where you get that real great feeling.
But I think you're entering it in a different way now. And in the old days, we would go to a job and meet a person and go on an interview and then fill out a form. Today, you're almost filling everything out online, and then perhaps you'll get an interview. So it's sort of the reverse of the way we were raised to go after a job.
Well, I guess I would differ a little bit. I think some of the research seems to suggest that networks still are so important.
Still are helping.
Are still the predominant way that people do get their jobs.
And you got to have people skills.
Yes,
that's
most definitely. Especially in an economy where there's an economist, Deirdre McCloskey, who estimated a couple of years ago that about 2/3 of economic growth is persuasion. I tell my students, it's persuasion. It's me talking to you.
One of the unique things about this economy, though, is that you do see students entering the workplace competing against professionals for a dwindling number of jobs. It's got to make it tough for the kids.
Yes. Well, and the other day, the Bureau of Labor Statistics published their what they call job openings data, and they came out, basically said, we still have, sort of for every job opening there is, about 4 people looking for the same job.
Wow, that's
a lot of competition out there.
Yeah. Yes. How do you make yourself stand out? What I was trying to say earlier is I see for people trying to get those jobs, it goes through online first versus the face-to-face. And you mentioned the networking, but it seems it's a social networking or it's an electronic and media networking. How do you break through that for the face-to-face like we're having now?
Well, for a young college graduate, one of the things I recommend for my students is trying to do those types of internships. With companies. The other thing I talked about too as a public policy response is to help rebuild the nonprofit sector, but provides wage subsidies to the United Way and other agencies to take on young college graduates, to take on individuals who've lost their jobs during the recession and bring them on for 4, 5, 6 weeks in temporary types of positions.
So where they're meeting people, and they're getting themselves out there.
Exactly.
Those are good networking tips.
That's right. And what ends up happening there, it's a win-win for the nonprofit who needs to rebuild their capacity, but it's also a way to, again, back to what I talked about at the beginning, job skills and honing those job skills.
Right. Thanks so much. We
Great to see you
look
again.
forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Time for a check of our top stories. Here's Matt Locker with the big picture. Matt?